The movie begins in the distant future with a desert planet Arrakis, the only planet in the universe that harbors a particular spice. This rare spice is a psychotropic substance that is essential for intergalactic travel. This is why the House of Harkonnens has enslaved generations of Fremens, the natives of Arrakis, controlling the entire production of the spice. This has made the Harkonnens even richer than Emperor Shaddam, the ruler of the entire universe. Eventually, the oppressors leave with their ships at the behest of Emperor Shaddam, but the Fremens know more empires will return for the spice. The Emperor has assigned Duke Leto Atreides, ruler of the planet Caladan, to gain control over Arrakis. Leto suspects some foul play in the Emperor's plan. He is not wrong, though. The Emperor is worried about Leto's rising popularity among the masses, and in his fear of being overthrown, he has plotted with the Baron of Harkonnens to conspire against Leto. Regardless, Leto accepts the offer for the sake of the power over Arrakis and forging an alliance with the Fremen. In the next scene, Paul Atreides, Duke Leto's son, is seen practicing his inner voice with his mother over breakfast. Lady Jessica is a disciple of the Bene Gesserit, an exclusive sisterhood that trains themselves to achieve strong psychic abilities, such as lie detection, sharp observation, and the voice, which enables them to control minds. Jessica was prophesied to bear a daughter who would give birth to a son destined to become Kwisatz Haderach, a messianic figure with psychic powers, who would eventually ensure peace in the world. However, Jessica falls for Duke Leto and gives birth to Paul. Being the future successor, Paul is trained under prominent figures of Caladan, such as the War Master and weapons expert Gurney Halleck, pilot and swordsman Duncan Idaho, Dr. Wellington Yue, and Thufir Hawat, a Mentat who has computer-like cognitive abilities. Paul returns to his room to prepare for the ceremony marking the House of Atreides as the official new ruler of Arrakis. He learns that the spice is more than just for interstellar travel. It is a sacred hallucinogen with vital health benefits and gives the characteristic blue eyes, called the Eyes of Ibad, to the Fremens. After the ceremony in the presence of the Imperial Court representatives, Leto warns Paul of the upcoming political danger and wishes for him to be ready to take over the House of Atreides when the time comes. Being one step ahead of the Emperor, Leto has arranged to send his best warrior Duncan Idaho with a convoy to Arrakis the next day to form an alliance with the Fremen. Paul requests to go along with Duncan, but he flatly refuses, for his safety. Paul tells him about seeing his death in his dream, but both Duncan and Duke Leto refuse to let Paul go. After an extreme dueling practice session with Gurney Halleck, a sleeping Paul is awoken by his mother, who takes him to meet the Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit. She is aware of his recurrent dreams and has Paul undertake an intense test to prove his control over his impulses. Instructing him to put his hand in a box, she gives him the choice to endure severe pain or choose death, as she holds a poisonous needle called the Gom Jabbar to his neck. Despite his initial weakness, Paul manages to overcome the pain and fear, which leaves the Reverend Mother thinking that Paul could be the chosen one to inherit the Bene Gesserit powers. She secretly meets the Baron of Harkonnens to spare the lives of Jessica and Paul in the upcoming battle against the House of Atreides. In the next scene, we see Gaidi Prime, House of the Harkonnens. The last fleet of their ships has finally returned from Arrakis, and a furious Glossu Rabban asks his uncle, Baron Vladimir, how he could let the Emperor give everything they have built over the years to the House of Atreides. Aware of the Emperor's scheme, the Baron calms down Rabban by presenting it as an opportunity to destroy Leto and reclaim Arrakis. After a few weeks, the House of Atreides arrives at Arrakis, where they are welcomed by the head of security, Thufir Hawat. The Fremen have gathered at a distance, and they chant Lisan al-Ghaib, which means voice from the outer world, or a messiah. Jessica believes that the Bene Gesserit sisters must have planted this notion among the Fremen, who are seeing the signs in Paul. They settle in Arrakeen, the capital of Arrakis, which is designed especially to withstand the massive sandstorms. Paul is studying about giant sandworms called Shai Hulud and how to bypass them in the desert when he suddenly notices a poisonous hunter-seeker aimed at him. He manages to subdue it with his skills, but Leto warrants a high alert in Arrakeen after the attempt on his son's life. Meanwhile, Jessica meets a local woman who, after confirming that Jessica and Paul are the Lisan al-Ghaib, entrusts her with a weapon, the tooth of Shai Hulud. Duncan returns from his mission, bringing news of numerous hidden caverns of Fremen in the desert. Each cavern, or sietch, harbors around 10,000 Fremen. The chieftain of the Fremen, Stilgar, meets with Leto, urging him to cultivate the spice but leave the sietches alone. Leto assures him that the sietches will remain untouched as long as he is the ruler. Stilgar leaves in a hurry, but he recognizes Paul's power before leaving. In the next scene, Paul and Leto are invited to a spice harvesting tour by Dr. Liet Kynes, a judge appointed by the Emperor and a planetologist. She ensures that everyone has their still suits on perfectly. These suits have high-efficiency filtration systems that help people survive the harsh weather conditions of the desert by cooling the bodies and recycling the sweat into drinkable water. Dr. Kynes is amazed how Paul knew how to wear the novel suit on his own, and she expresses it in Fremen language as a sign of Lisan al-Gaib. On the way, they notice a sandworm, drawn to the rhythmic sound emitted from the harvester, so Dr. Kynes signals for a carry-all to lift the harvester. However, due to defective equipment left by the Harkonnens, they are unable to do so. Leto decides to rescue the harvester crew via the ornithopters, signaling Gurney and Paul to direct the harvester crew to safety. As the sandworm gets closer, Paul inhales the spice, which triggers a vision. While hearing voices chanting Quizast Haderach, he sees the same Fremen woman in his vision, who kisses him only to stab him later. Gurney rushes to Paul's side, and they all make it back to the base. Leto is furious at the conditions of the equipment, knowing he has been set to fail, but Dr. Kynes tells him that the desert does not treat machinery and humans nicely. Dr. Yue assesses Paul for the said hallucinogen, but Paul tells Jessica that it wasn't a hallucination, but a vision. He also tells her about her pregnancy, which leaves Jessica shocked because nobody knows besides her. Jessica tries to tell Leto about the things happening with Paul, but he stops her. He asks her to protect him in case something happens to him. In the next scene, the Harkonnens and Sardaukar army attack Arrakis in the dark of the night, killing most of Leto's unsuspecting men. This attack is facilitated by Dr. Yue, who betrays Leto as his wife has been kidnapped by the Harkonnens. However, he gives a certain poison to Leto to kill the Baron. When the Baron captures him, Leto releases the poison, killing himself and Harkonnen Mentat Peter while injuring the Baron. The Bran appoints his nephew, the Beast Rabban, to overlook the spice harvest. Jessica and Paul are taken captive by the Harkonnen army, but Jessica uses the voice to get rid of them. As she and Paul make their way through the desert, Paul comes into contact with the spice and has a vision of a holy war fought across the universe in his name. Eventually, they are rescued by Duncan and Dr. Kynes, who take them to an abandoned research facility. It was intended to bring greenery and life back to Arrakis, but the greed for spice left the desert almost uninhabitable. To avoid war, Paul tells Duncan that he intends to marry one of the Emperor's daughters to form an alliance. Suddenly, they are discovered by the Sardaukar army, and Duncan sacrifices himself, giving Paul and Jessica enough time to escape. An injured Dr. Kynes summons a sandworm that kills the Sardaukar men. Paul and Jessica are allowed in Stilgar's tribe, and Paul finally meets the woman in his vision who is Stilgar's daughter, Chani. One of the Fremen warriors, Jamis, disapproves. He challenges Paul to a battle to the death. Paul defeats him, winning the trust of the Fremen, and decides to honor his father's legacy of peace with the Fremens by officially joining them.
And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch the next videos on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.